Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, I'm going to take you back to my very first bull elk, and I didn't have very much Western big game hunting experience when it happened. No system, no advanced tactics that we talk about here, no deep understanding of how elk actually lived, but somehow it worked. And looking back now, after more than 30 years of elk hunting, I can see exactly why. But at the time, I thought it was luck. I thought I just happened to be in the right place at the right time with the little bit of knowledge that I did have. But the reality is, there were a few key things that happened that I didn't even fully realize. And those same things still matter today. So in this episode, I'm going to walk you through that hunt, what actually happened, and more importantly, why it worked. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years. And I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent elk hunter. Now, before I ever killed my first bull, my understanding of elk hunting was shaped almost entirely by what I had seen growing up. My family hunted with horses. We'd ride deep into the backcountry, get into position, and hunt a very specific setup. A north-facing slope, it was shaded, cool, with a defined travel route through it. Elk would pass through that area in the morning, and then again in the evening, and it worked. Year after year, my dad killed bulls there. Not once or twice, but over 20 years in a row. Same area, same type of setup, same type of movement. So as a kid watching that, I built a very simple belief. Elk use the same routes every single day. That's what I thought elk hunting was. Find the trail, find the route, sit the movement, and wait for it to happen. And to be fair, I saw those results. There was a level of predictability there. Elk were showing up and bulls were getting killed. So it reinforced that belief over and over again. But what I didn't understand at the time was why it worked. I didn't understand thermals. I didn't understand pressure. I didn't understand how elk used terrain differently depending on conditions. All I saw was the outcome, not the system behind it. So in my mind, elk were just moving through. And at the same time, there was always something in the back of my head pulling me in a little bit different direction. Across the valley, there was a completely different type of country. South-facing slope, more sun, more vegetation, more feed, and it just looked alive. It didn't match what I'd been shown. It didn't match the proven setup that my dad used for 20-some years, but I couldn't ignore it either. That was the tension. Everything I had seen told me to stay with what worked, but something else was telling me there might be more going on than just travel routes. At some point, I made a decision that didn't line up with anything I'd been taught. Instead of going back to that same north-facing slope, the same travel route, the same setup that had worked for decades, I went the other direction. I decided to hunt the south-facing side of the valley. And looking back, that was the moment everything has changed in my elk hunting. I didn't have a system. I didn't have experience to back it up. All I had was a gut feeling that something about that side of the mountain made more sense to me. So I committed to it. I hiked in a few miles in the dark, completely on my own, heading toward a spot I had never actually been on before. No horses, no familiar route, no fallback plan, just a direction and a belief that I needed to be there. And it wasn't just about getting there, it was about how I approached it. I climbed, I gained elevation, I pushed up into that south-facing slope where the vegetation was thicker, greener, and more alive than what I had been used to seeing. It wasn't shaded and quiet like the north side. It was more open in places, broken up with small clearings and young pines, and it just felt like the place elk would want to hang out in. And at the time, I couldn't have explained it the way I can now, but I was being pulled by a few key things back then. The feed, the sun exposure, the dark timber next to it and around it, and the way that vegetation responded to it. That side of the mountain was different, and I knew it. But the most important part of that entire decision wasn't just where I went, it was when I got there. I made it a point to be in position before the sun hit that slope. And that detail, something I didn't fully understand at the time, ended up being one of the most important factors in the entire hunt. Because I wasn't reacting to elk movement, I was there before it started. So by the time I reached the top of that climb, it was just starting to break light. I eased my way up to the edge of a small clearing that was still pretty much on the slope. It was really broken up with a lot of young pines scattered throughout. And the whole time it was surrounded by thicker timber on all sides, right? It just felt like a place that elk would move through in a slower pace, right? But also a place they could stay hidden. I remember stepping up to the edge of that opening, not rushing, just trying to see what was in front of me before committing any further. And all of a sudden, that's when it happened. Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations and Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post-Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory. It's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. Across that clearing, about a couple hundred yards out on the opposite edge, there was a bull. I didn't care what the antler size was. I just knew there was a bull there. There was no sound, no bugle, no warning, no buildup. He was just there, moving naturally, head down feeding, completely unaware that I was there. There was nothing forced about it. There was no strategy layered on top of it. I hadn't done anything to create that encounter. I had just shown up in the right place at the right time. And it's this little bull you can see part of down here in the corner. And some people probably think that's pretty funny that I have that little bull up there on the wall out of the many elk that I've killed. But this is my first bull, and my dad got him on that sweet looking plaque. And anyway, it just means an awful lot to me. But getting back to the tactics of it, there was no complexity to it, no sequence of moves or adjustments, no trying to fix a bad setup or force a situation to come together. The elk was there because he was supposed to be there. That clearing, that edge, that moment, everything lined up naturally. And all I had to do was recognize it and execute. At that time, I didn't fully understand what I had done. I just knew it worked. But that moment, stepping into that clearing and seeing that bull exactly where he should be, that's what changed how I looked at elk hunting from that point forward. Again, at the time, I thought that elk hunt was a lot of luck with some hard work mixed in. Looking back now, it really wasn't luck. There were a few things happening that I didn't understand then, but they are exactly what made it work. First, I was in a place where feed and bedding were close together. That small clearing had feed and it was surrounded by thicker timber that elk could bed in. That proximity matters more than most hunters realize. Elk don't want to travel further than they have to, especially in the morning. If they can feed and then slip right back into security, that's where they're going to be. Second, I wasn't hunting just where elk passed through. I was hunting where they wanted to be. That's a completely different mindset. Most hunters focus on movement, trails, routes, travel corridors, and that's what I had grown up seeing. But what I was stepping into that morning wasn't a travel route, it was living space. That's the key contrast. My family hunted movement routes. I ended up hunting where elk lived, and that's why the encounter felt so natural, because that bull wasn't just passing through. He was there because that's where he belonged at that time of day. Third, I had unknowingly put myself above and away from pressure. At least 3 miles in, climbing elevation much, much, much higher than I would have hunted before, getting in terrain that most hunters weren't pushing into. It was more like high country mule deer in high basin country than really elk country that I'd been exposed to. But that created separation. Whether I realized it or not, I was in a place where elk could relax. And finally, there was the time timing of it. I was there before the sun hit that slope, and that matters. North facing slopes tend to hold security and shade, but those south facing slopes warm up. They produce better feed and create movement as elk transition from feeding back to bedding. What I intercepted wasn't random, it was natural morning positioning. That bull was exactly where he should have been, feeding close to security in a place that made sense. I mean, a couple minutes later, and he would have been in the trees. And that's the lesson a lot of elk hunters miss. Elk weren't just traveling through there, they were staying there. At that point, I didn't have experience. I didn't have advanced tactics. I wasn't thinking about thermals, pressure systems, or strategy the way I do now. But I did some things right. Not because I knew more, but because I prioritized something that actually mattered. Elk need three things close together: food, security, and low pressure. That's it. And without fully understanding it, that's exactly what I stepped into that morning. I wasn't chasing movement. I wasn't forcing an interaction. I wasn't trying to make something happen. I was in a place where elk already wanted to be. And that's the reframe. Success didn't come from knowing more. It came from accidentally prioritizing the right things that I want you to understand. And once you understand that, you stop trying to hunt harder and start hunting smarter. Now, if you want to go deeper into elk movement, pressure patterns, terrain positioning, and structured decision making, that's exactly why I built the elk hunting series of ebooks. It's a progressive system designed to help you understand how elk actually use country and how to position yourself accordingly. I have a link to those ebooks in the description. If you want hands-on application and real-time breakdowns, we have an in-person Elk Camp 2026 this summer that is built around this same philosophy: structure, preparation, and execution in real time. My son Saxton and I are going to be putting this camp on for you and taking you through as many scenarios and situations as we can so you leave with the best understanding of elk possible. You can check out our Elk Camp at backboneunlimited.com. And if you want ongoing access to the Team Backbone community, classroom, my full digital vault of elk resources, private discussions, and direct communication to me for planning, you can join Team Backbone at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Everything we talk about here is connected. Preparation is not a single video, it's a system. Thanks for being here. I appreciate all of you. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.